So tonight, or today for many of you, we're talking about religion has to be part of the solution. And we're hosting Rabbi Yacov Nagen, who, by the way, was a fellow student of mine at Yeshivat Har Etzion long over 40 years ago. I think we remember each other from then. Rabbi Nagen, or Rabbi Dr. Yacov Nagen, is an Orthodox rabbi and teacher. And he's the director of the Torah Stone Blickle Institute for Interfaith Dialogue. We see on our screen Mr. and Mrs. Blickle, who are the supporters and the benefactors of that great center at Torah Stone.
Yes. Thank you.
Rabbi Nagen is also the leader, and this is really important to me, the leader of the Roots Jewish-Muslim Dialogue Group, which he conducts in cooperation with the Interfaith Encounter Association. And I myself I'm one of the members of that group. We've been doing it for many, many years. It's interesting, exciting, challenging, and Rabbi Nagen's leadership in that group is really, really central and important. So without further ado, we'll give the floor or the microphone or the screen to Rav Yacov Nagen.
Okay, thank you, Rav Hanan, and I'm grateful to be hosted by Shorashim. I feel what Shorashim does is unique and significant, a model which I hope will be and is being reproduced in other places throughout the West Bank or Judea Samaria or the PA. For many years, every lecture that I give, I begin by remembering two things that we should never forget. First, I begin by stating today's Hebrew date, and today's date is unique. It never was and will never return. And by stating today's date, this helps me remember how unique today is and try to live today the way it should be. I then add a verse from Tehillim, from Psalms, about the connection between life and joy, because so much of life is our perspective on life. So without further ado, Hayom, Tet Vav Cheshvan, Taf Shin Pei Aleph, Ze Hayom, Asa Adonai, Nagila V'nismecha Bo. I'll mention that for many years, I was privileged to have a close relationship with Rabbi Menachem Froman, who many is the founder of the Interfaith grassroots peace movement in the Holy Land. I was a rabbi in the Otniel, in the Yeshiva of Otniel for more than 20 years, where also Rabbi Froman taught. And I liked, during his lifetime, was often seen as a maverick, but ultimately his teachings have become much more mainstream. In fact, there's a well-known photo about so Rav Hanan, if you could do shituf, about a joint prayer with the Muslim inhabitants of Bethlehem. And there, I'm there together with Rabbi Froman. And in fact, this picture was chosen, it's not this, it's further down.
Further down, okay.
With Rav Froman, it's the one, okay. Okay, a little bit further down.
That's all I have. That's all that came through. Sorry.
I did? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay. Well, you have that picture also. It's with everybody bowing down with Rav Menachem. Being it as it may, the picture with Rav Menachem found itself on the wall of the Ben Gurion airport for everybody leaving Israel. This is what it shows. You see a picture of hope, of joint prayer with the Palestinian inhabitants of Bethlehem.
Muslim presentation from Israel is on right now. If you're interested.
Okay. 1 second. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try again to send this. And after a few years, it was taken down from the airport. And I always wondered, where did it end up? One day my students were drafted into the army, to the tank Shirion, and it turns out that in the place where all the ceremonies of tanks are held, they put up that picture of joint prayer with Rabbi Froman and the Palestinians. Okay, so I'll make one last try to send this. Okay, just wait one. Rav Hanan, I do see it in what I sent you. It's the picture.
It wasn't able to be downloaded.
I understand. Okay. I guess with Rav Menachem, it was too holy to be downloaded. It could only be uploaded. But the reason, okay, I tried to send it again. Maybe this time it'll work. Being as I may, I mentioned Rabbi Froman because I'd like to begin with what I think was his fundamental insight, which then was very revolutionary. Rabbi Froman said that in the Middle East, we know that religion is very much the heart of the problem. And this many would agree to. But he said this is exactly why, if it's the heart of the problem, it will have to be the heart of the solution. You cannot ignore. You could like it or you could not like it, but you cannot ignore the religious factor in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I know that even my friend Carl mentioned that he's very active in the Geneva Accords. One of the founders of the Oslo Accords, Yair Hirschfeld, which he said he reached this insight that once the King of Spain invited all the Israeli and Palestinian participants at the original Madrid talks to some sort of a reunion. And when they came there, the king said, we prepared a special Spanish delicacy for you. And it turned out it was made out of pork. And the Israelis and the Palestinians all sat together and ate the pork that was prepared for them. And at the time, Yair said, he thought, here, this is so wonderful, how we could overcome tribal divisions and all go beyond our identities and eat this pork together. But then he realized something is missing. The fact that everybody at the port means there were people who are not at the table. And that's one of the things that brought him to the realization, we have to find how to engage religion and religious people to this conflict. But getting back, okay, so here this is prayer. This is in Gush Etzion, and was a time of a terrible drought in Israel, and something that very touched me. And then I'll get back to Rabbi Froman's work. That the mayor of Bethlehem addressed the Jews, and most of us were settlers from the West Bank, and he started his speech with, "My brothers, the settlers." He had a lot of criticism to say, some of which I agreed, some which I didn't agree. But the fact that he chose what in Hebrew is the two words, "my brothers, the settlers," this is something that very much opened the hearts of all and allowed us to really listen to what he had to say. But going back to Rav Froman's words, if religion is part of the problem, religion will have to be part of the solution. And now meaning our religious identity could connect us to one another. It could also divide us. And I think it connects to one very basic question. Do I believe the God that I believe in, the God that I love, the God that I pray to, the God that I believe loves me, is your God? Is it a different God, a foreign God? Our faith will disconnect us. But if I believe that it's not your God, it's our God, and then this will be a powerful force for our unity. And this is true also about our ethnic identities. Will we focus on Jews and Arabs, children of Abraham, or we focus on our different ethnic identities? Now, on the surface, especially when we talk about the primary players in this conflict, which are Jews and Muslims, I know we have together Christians here, and I think somehow this is, for me, this is a model about how things could change. We have, certainly we have Carl, we have Lisbeth, and I saw someone, John, before, and I think, so we have a number of Christians here. And certainly we know that the Jewish-Christian dialogue has very much moved from places of disconnection to connection. But Judaism and Islam, that on the surface, it would seem to be even easier to have a connection through the concept of God and ethnicity, because Jews and Arabs acknowledge each other as children of Abraham, and the conception of God is very similar, and also the stress on different aspects of doing, even ritual doing, such as eating halal and kashrut. But we know the realities are very different, because even though we do have a potential, the Quran speaks often and well of Ahlul Kitab, meaning the people of the book, which many people don't realize that concept, people of the book, goes back to the Quran. Throughout the Middle Ages, there was a very fruitful discussion between rabbis and Muslim leaders, and often they would even quote each other. We know that the son of the Rambam, Maimonides, was a Sufi mystic, and one of the great works of Jewish ethics and philosophy, The Duties of the Heart, often quotes different Muslim philosophers. In fact, there's an edition in Arabic of the Duties of the Heart by Rabbi Bachaya in Arabic, was written in Arabic with a commentary that gives all these Islamic sources for the book. But despite this, we know our ethnic and religious identities have not been connecting us, but they've been a source of a lot of the religious hatred and conflict. And certainly because the conflict itself has led to narratives of disconnection. So the question is, how can we reclaim religion as a positive force for peace, for shalom? And I would say that the theology is important, but what's more important, and this really gets back to what Roots does day in, day out, is the real life encounters. It's I think if Edison said that invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, I would say what we need is 1% theology, and that 1% is important, and 99% of the perspiration is the real encounter, real people encountering and meeting the other. And this really gets to that wonderful statement by the great Sufi mystic Rumi, which is written outside the town of the Rose of Jericho in 3 languages on tablets. Beyond ideas of right thinking, beyond ideas of wrong thinking, there is a field. There we will meet. And if there's one place that captures this concept, it's Roots. Because Roots, it's just a grassroots interfaith encounter program. First of all, it's a field. It's a real location. And in that real location of Palestinian-owned land, so although it's on the West Bank, people feel comfortable from both sides being there. And it's a place of connecting despite what your opinions and views are. So this insight of Rumi is why the encounter is so significant. And I would say, and I can't resist, there are a lot of very people I feel connected, but I think this is the first time seeing live my dear brother, Rafael Castro, who I'm incredibly grateful because he translated my book into spirituality into Italian. And I'm a big fan of his on Facebook. But this is not instead of all the other people it's great to see, but Rafael, I don't think I've ever seen you face to face like this. Okay, now, why is the real encounter so significant? So I would like to give 3 points about why it can't just be the ideas and it can't just be the theology. I almost had a Freudian slip and said idolatry instead of theology, but it's really because all these ideas are no substitute for real people and real meeting. I think the whole point of interfaith, I said this recently when I introduced Carl at an event earlier this week, that interfaith is not only about God. Interfaith, it's about people. It's about connecting people and finding the God inside of each of them as a basis for their connection. Now, when a real encounter takes place, 3 things can happen. First of all, the most obvious is that people could change, but when you meet the other as he really is and not how you think he is, that itself could lead to changing what you think about the other. This is the first and the most obvious. But there's a second point. When you have encounter the other, the truths you know in your head, you're able to take them down into your heart. Because I think ultimately people know the right thing. If you would ask anybody about their religion, they would say, my religion is for peace. My religion is against violence and and respects life. In people's head, they have the right ideas. The problem is taking the ideas from the head and bringing them down into the heart, and bringing them down into the heart to make them a living reality. And it's this journey from the head to the heart where things get most stuck. And that's why, and the way to heal that, to help that journey to take place, is when real people meet each other, then you see suddenly those truths enter your heart. And that's why I find it so powerful, joint prayer, because we could talk. When you really go and you pray together and you see the authenticity of the love and devotion and faith that our brothers and sisters have in their standing in front of God, this is transformative. And this allows us to move from the head down into the heart. And then there's the third thing that happens. The third thing that happens is something new is created. When one of my favorite books is The Little Prince. And the most famous line in The Little Prince is, that which is essential is hidden from the eye. And that statement is referring to relationships. 2 people could create a relationship. You can't see that relationship. You see the 2 people, but in the time that they spend devoted to each other, something is created between them, in that space between them. The Talmud would say this is the Shekhinah, the divine that exists in the presence, the Talmud says, between man and woman, and the Zohar continues that to the encounter between any 2 people. If blessed, it's that connection between them. It's invisible, you can't see it, but it's sacred. And when people meet each other without adding any pollution to the world, you add this invisible force, which is that which is essential. So encounters are important, and I've been involved with Interfaith Encounters for at least 15 years.
Fantastic.
And I see many of my partners are here. Rebecca, Raviol, and others. And of course, the staff and the people of Roots. But I see this has helped me change what I think about the others. That's number one. Take truths from my head, things that you just say them, but things that really exist in the heart. And number three, creating relationships. And it's those connections which really change the world. Sometimes people that are cynical say, do you think the fact that you have all these Muslim friends is gonna, or also I have some Christian Arab friends, that this is what's gonna bring shalom to the Middle East? So I say, first of all, if I have a deep, warm connection with another person, this already is shalom. This is not a means to an end. It's not what's going to come out of it. It's something which is happening right now. Shalom is happening right now in this encounter between me and the other person. Now, since I've been giving a theology of encounters, let me move to perhaps sharing some stories. I feel that stories often are more powerful than ideas, because a good story includes the idea, but it shows how this idea is realized in life itself. So I'd like to share a number of interfaith stories that I think will reflect these three truths. These 3 points about the significance of the encounter. But let me try to give, I use so many words to say something that really could be summarized in 3 words. I was once at a conference in Amman, Jordan. There's a lovely organization called the United Religions Initiative. It's a group of close to 1,000 grassroots organizations with close to 1 million members, that they kind of want to be some type of a alternative to the UN. In fact, Rabbi Avram Yeshua Heschel was one of the major also founders of interfaith thinking, and he has a famous article called "No Religion is an Island," and he says, and he makes this point, just like there's a UN for politics, we need a UN for religions. And in fact, there is, every few years, there is a parliament for world religions. In fact, just last week, I was speaking to a professor of Islam from the United Emirates, and I realized, I meet him through Zoom, and I realized we've met before, and that was going back to the parliament. But a organization that works all the time is the United Religions Initiative, and they break the world up into regions. And there's the region of the Middle East, which they make great efforts for Israel and Jews to be part of this initiative, and that's why they have it in Amman, Jordan, which maybe till the signing of the treaty with the Emirates was the most friendly Arab capital. Anyway, at the meeting, which we had representatives from every country of the Middle East, in 3 words, they managed to summarize what I've been talking about for the last 20 minutes. Connection before correction. Connection before correction. And I think in a nutshell, that captures it. And I think also the tragedy of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because the feeling is, many say we could only connect after we've achieved peace and justice. And there's a lot of anger involved, and there's a lot of hatred involved, and a lot of suffering involved. But all that feeds into narratives of disconnection. But for whatever the rights and wrong of this conflict, disconnection is only going to make any possibility of a better future more distant, more impossible. And the only way we can move forward to build a joint future is only if we find that place of connection. So whatever people feel about the rights and wrongs of this conflict, whatever vision you have, the only way ahead is first connection before correction. And I think this is one of the fundamental mistakes of the Oslo process, the thought that peace could come from above and not realize that peace must come from below.
I agree.
Well, thank you, Carl. And I'm so grateful for Carl, who has I've taken a year for the time being a sabbatical for Otniel to start a new institution to devote myself fully to these issues. And this is with the partnership and the support of Carl and his people that are also with us on this discussion. So it's really, it's all about connection, and the connection. But going back to Oslo, they even would quote, "Good fences make good neighbors," not realizing that if we would get back to the original poem by Robert Frost about good fences making good neighbors, to realize that was said ironically. And people love blaming the leaders, and the leaders, there's a lot to blame them. But ultimately, the responsibility, we have to take responsibility. And taking responsibility means the people must take responsibility. And if the people, and for me, that means the grassroots interfaith peace movement is about people, it's about connection between people, and hoping to get to a tipping point, a critical mass, that no organization could do it by itself. And I think what's so beautiful is that, at least the organizations that I deal with, there's so much I feel a lack of competition, and so much a connection of joint vision. I have on this call, there's so many groups represented. We have roots, and so Connie mentioned how we have a joint progress with another organization, the Interfaith Encounter. We have Raviol, who has the Abrahamic Initiative. Is that what it's called?
Movement.
The Abrahamic Movement. And we have Carl's organization in Germany. There are a lot of organizations involved here. And I feel the one way we get a tipping point, and I'm so happy that this is the case. I mean, I know that often ideological movements, they're always stepping on each other's toes, and the Trotskyites and the Stalinites are fighting with each other all the time. But Baruch Hashem, I once heard a very true statement by one of the leaders of another organization I'm involved with, called the Abrahamic Reunion. And one of the leaders once said, "I don't like peace demonstrations that don't demonstrate peace." And I think this is the deepest, truest statements I've heard. Just like during the Cold War, you could always know, if you wanted to know which Germany was the communist totalitarian, that was the one that would have the word democratic as part of the name, if I recall. In the same way, often not every peace organization that uses the word peace is really about peace. And I think the test case is not about how left-wing you are or how right-wing you are, but are you demonstrating peace? If you're demonstrating peace, you're really a peace organization. If not, then you're something else, which I'd rather not say. But fortunately, they are. Gandhi, we know Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And that's why peace organizations to truly deserve to to that name, that word could only be those. However upset you are, however much anger or pain you feel, if you are not demonstrating peace, then you are not you could do other things and it's legitimate, but you're not promoting peace. But fortunately, there are many, and I feel I've been on the interfaith scene for 15 years. And the good news is there are so many more and good groups and so many of them who are working together. Let me mention one other group, which I haven't mentioned because I've mentioned quite a few. I would like also to mention there's a wonderful, and I see there are many women on this call, and I see that one of the really, I think in recent years is that women have become so much more involved. Interfaith used to be so masculine. And I think one of my favorite organizations, which I think is in terms of grassroots, is probably larger than all the organizations I mentioned till now, is, and I see here you have the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, wonderful. And there's an organization called, their name in English is not so good. In Hebrew it comes up better, but in English it is Woman Wage Peace, which is they use the word peace, but it's used and not misused, because authentically, I've been at a lot of their events, even though a man, they're very open, they let men show up to their events also. But they authentically, it's really feels something very feminine and woman about how they do it. And you feel it's very about peace, and you have left-wingers and right-wingers and religious and secular and Israeli and Palestinians. So this is part of the good news that I could share about things that are happening.
What was the title? Woman's Wage Peace?
Woman Wage Peace. Yes.
Wage.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Got the alliteration, but somehow the wage, I felt a little bit too militaristic. Okay, and Rebecca is now mentioning the name of her organization, Al-Sadin Din, and we have another organization mentioned here, Praying Together in Jerusalem. Okay, but now I'd like to share a few stories, and then maybe leave time for your questions and interaction. Now, one of my, I always know that real stories are like soap operas. The real stories they always seem to have some continuation, and you never quite know when you've gotten to the end of the story. So the first story I'd like to share with you, I live in the area near Hebron, Al-Khalil. Hebron in Hebrew comes from Chaver, which means friend. Al-Khalil, the Arabic name, comes from the word, the friend, referring to Abraham, friend of God. And Hebron is known, certainly throughout the world, for many terrible acts of terror and atrocities that were taking place there, going back to the massacre of the Jewish community of Hebron in the 1920s, including the massacre of Muslims in prayer at the Cave of the Patriarchs by Dr. Baruch Goldstein, and many acts of terror. But there's another side of Hebron, which is less known, of many of deep spiritual connections between the Jews and Muslims in Hebron itself. I'm even active in a group of the leadership of the Jewish community of Hebron, with leaders of in the town in Hebron. And so I'd like to tell, unfortunately, all the bad things are true. When people say that sometimes I see the good in things too much, I say the bad things are all true, but that everybody knows. So I don't have to repeat these incidents of terror. Even my community, Otniel, is one of the communities which has been hardest hit by terror at all in Israel, of any place. But the bad things we all know. The challenge is to see that reality has other dimensions, because if you only know the negative, then you start building a narrative of dualism between the forces of light and the forces of darkness, of good and evil, and you're locked in. But when you see the complexities of all sides, you see the negative, but you also see the positive, then you realize that things are fluid and things could change. So some stories, my first story takes place in the Marat HaMachpelah, the cave of the patriarchs in the city of Hebron, which according to Jewish tradition is the burial place of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. My wife is there on a Friday afternoon, and she finds herself totally alone in the cave. And people must have been going home to prepare for Shabbat, and she was able to be there till later. And she felt this is a unique opportunity to pray alone with our holy fathers and mothers. But suddenly, the minhara on the Mizgad, on the mosque, the cave of the patriarchs is also a mosque, and there's a Muslim part, and the muazzin goes off at the mosque, and this is very, very loud. This is supposed to reach all of Hebron, and my wife realizes there's no way she can continue her prayer. But then she thinks, if you can't beat them, join them. We're praying to the same God, so let me join in. She joins in with the muazzin, and when you resist something, it sounds like noise. But when you join in, she realized for the first time what beautiful music it is, what a beautiful voice there is to the muazzin who is calling to prayer. This was on Friday, and she asked me, do I think, is it a real person doing the muazzin, or is it some sort of a recording? So that Sunday, I had a meeting in the context of the Interfaith Encounter with a group of Muslim sheikhs from Hebron. So I asked my friend Sheikh Ahmed from the Abu Snena neighborhood, which faces the Mara, is it a real person or is it a recording? And he says, a recording? Of course it's a person. It's a relative of mine, and I will send regards. Now, as I said, real stories have continuations. Sometime later, I'm at another meeting of the Interfaith Encounter. This time it's in the hotel, the Everest Hotel in Beit Jala, which is a suburb of Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Where we have our meetings before we had that wonderful blessing of Shorashim, roots beginning, and we were able to, instead of a corner of a hotel, to have a much more authentic, important place. But I'm sitting there and I see this new Arab joins our discussion, and I see everyone's really excited to see him. So I say, who is this guy? And they say, wow, he's from Hebron and he has this incredibly beautiful voice. So I take a chance and I say, wait a second, are you the muazzin from the cave of the patriarchs? And he looks at me, how did you know? And indeed it was him, and we began our meeting with songs of friendship. But in fact, I think the real ending of the story took place about a year later, that a group at our most recent meeting in Roots, of our interfaith group, we had somebody called Dr. Ayal Berry showed up. And he's very into finding traces of the lost 10 tribes. And apparently there's an ancient tradition that the Pashtun tribe, which is in Afghanistan and North India, you can look it up in Wikipedia, they trace themselves to the 10 tribes of Israel. In fact, they have all sorts of customs that are not Islamic, but go back to Jewish custom. Being as it may, I don't know how historical it is or it isn't, but Dr. Ayal decided to take a group of Pashtuns who are devout Muslims to have a roots tour of coming to see the Holy Land, because they believe they're the descendants of the 10 tribes. And he asked me, could I take them to the cave of the patriarchs? So I took them to the cave. And at that time, my grandmother was very sick. And I asked them to pray for my grandmother. So I thought they'd say a couple of words. But for several minutes, they were devoutly praying for my grandmother, who afterwards had what was considered to be a miraculous recovery. But anyway, a little bit later, the muazzin goes off on the Muslim part of the Marat HaMachpelah. Now, and these Pashtuns, they trace themselves to the 10 tribes, but right now they're very Muslim. And the muazzin goes off. They want to pray right then in the cave of the patriarchs. So, but it's complicated because first they have to wash their hands. So I find a place for them to wash their hands. But they also need something to put on the ground. So I see this Chabad Chassid, and he has this big towel. And they say, excuse me, can I please borrow that towel? I said, what do you need the towel for? He goes, so I say, between me and you, these guys are Muslim and they want to pray right now. So he says, towel, I'll bring you the carpet that the Kohanim use when they do give the blessings each day. So this is the real, I think, closure of this story. Let me also mention, for me, these are stories about the truths in my head coming to the heart, but I like to also go back to how encounters change when we think about the other. I am a neighbor and very close friend with Rabbi Yehuda Glick, who's the Israeli police once called him the most dangerous person in the Middle East because he's a big believer in Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount. Now, but what's also true, he's a very prominent interfaith activist and very sensitive in particular to Islam. In fact, when he was elected to the Knesset, he began the Knesset's first Jewish Muslim caucus. And when Israel wanted to pass a law about the muazzins, since the muazzin is so loud and the first one goes off at before sunrise, and this often wakes people up, so they wanted to pass a law to curtail the muazzin. Well, there was just thunder and lightning, and there's a blessing said. So when you hear the first thunder and lightning, so please, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, shekocho ugvurato malei olam. A blessing to God whose strength fills the world, seeing the workings of nature as an expression of the divine in life. Okay, now getting back to Yehuda Glick. So Israel also wanted to pass this law about curtailing the muazzin. But Yehuda felt that if this would be done as law instead of a discussion, this would be seen as a undercutting Islam, and this would be something that would create greater friction. This is a sensitive issue that should be discussed and not something that should come about by legislation. So he led an emergency meeting in the Knesset itself to see how to stop this legislation. And I was there, and the head, Yehuda, miraculously survived an assassination attempt. And the assassin said, "I'm sorry, you're an enemy of the Al-Aqsa," and shot at point blank 4 bullets. And again, it was considered to be miraculous that he managed to survive that. But the head of the Waqf was at that meeting, and Yehuda was talking with such warmth about Al-Aqsa and the Muazzin and Islam, that the head of the Waqf said, I have to say something. So Yudah says, say. And the head of the Waqf says, I change everything that I think about you. And Yehuda has a quirky sense of humor. He says, uh-oh, they're going to take away my bodyguards now. But anyway, but seeing that so much, we know so little about each other. Okay, so here we've had two stories about the head to the heart, changing things, and relationships beginning. And the truth is, I could tell another 100 stories or so, but I am concerned that part of an encounter is having people raise questions. So let's have some discussion. And I know that we finish at 11 o'clock Israel time. Is that correct, Rabbi Hanan?
Yes.
Okay. So please, let's open on the floor of the Zoom for any questions or discussions, and I'm all with you.
So people can speak up, unmute yourself and speak up, or you can write in the chat, whatever you'd like.
Okay, wonderful. And maybe I will mention that to overcome my desire to tell more stories, I have a number of articles in the Times of Israel. I think in my Wikipedia page, there are links that with many more stories and also ideas about both future political solutions for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and also thinking about different ways to change the status quo in on the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa. Okay, so please, I'm all yours.
Can I right away ask the first question for your story concerning Yehuda Glick?
Please, Carl.
I think this offers a very good example of the question I've been long thinking of. You know, I'm since more than 40 years engaged in interfaith dialogue and also in Israeli-Palestinian peace efforts. And only lately I've become acquainted with connecting the two, that political peace probably cannot come into existence without the participation of religion. That was what you were talking about. The question is, to me, it's great, all these encounters happening, which you just described. But when it then comes to the political reality, like in the case of Yehuda Glick, that Jews trying to build the third temple or conquering the Temple Mount whatsoever, then regardless of all the encounter and which maybe Yehuda Glick may have, and this is also true when it comes to the settlements and the how to share the space with Palestinians there. How does that religious spirit of reconciliation then unite with the political level, so that a basis of real political or coexistence can grow from it? If a religion cannot only provide the wording to say we have to be more friendly with each other and meet and encounter, but it has to bear political consequences. And if this is proved, that religion can provide also recommendations or guidelines how to find a political accord, like now when this new agreement is called Abraham Accord, which for the first time a political union is giving a religious reasoning for, with between Saudi Arabia or the Emirates and Israel. But this is my big question. As much as I agree with you on this level on encounter, etc., but what effect does that have when it comes to the political reality?
Yes, this is a very important question. And so let me mention, because we have a power shortage here. So for the time being, the Zoom is still working. But if we get cut off prematurely, it's been wonderful being with you. Being in a little village means that we have a lot of power shortages. Okay, now, so as you know, Carl, I've dealt with both of these issues. First of all, for example, Yehuda Glick. Yehuda Glick has written talking about the Alaska Mosque as a partial fulfillment of the vision of the book of Isaiah of the Temple Mount being a house of prayer for all people. Okay, what Yehuda believes in is, what he focuses in primarily, is Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount. So it's not a question, and I think so. The question is always, what is the other person thinking? This is part of it. When you encounter Yehuda Glick, part of it you realize what he's saying and suggesting is not what you think he's talking about.
Okay, I agree.
So that's one issue. And in fact, I'll try to send it also to, again, it's on my Wikipedia. I'll see if I could send it. Hanan, maybe send links to my articles on the Temple Mount and also on the Abrahamic Union, which they have links in my Wikipedia page. So while I'm talking, please send that. And if I get cut off, that'll help. Okay, we have the emergency light over here. Yeah. Okay. Now, so again, this is part of. I think I was with Rav Hanan together at a conference in Brown University, which is not, Brown University we know is not necessarily a bastion of right-wing fanatics. Brown is probably one of the most liberal and left-wing of many of the academic of the Ivy Leagues, and the conference we were out was about feasible solutions to Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And one thing that I found fascinating is that whether the Israelis, there are two groups of people. There are people that came to shout at each other, but the people that came there to think about how could we build something together, almost all of them came to similar type of ideas. They all came to some balance between a two-state solution and a one-state solution. Einstein says, when there are two possibilities and none of them are good, we need a third possibility.
Is that your Confederate solution, which you suggested?
Exactly, right, exactly. Which I hope that Rav Hanan will find the link. Rav Hanan, look at Yakov Nagen, the Abrahamic Union, and you'll find the link and send it to the chat. And to say, and we have and Yoel has his parallel approach very well developed, which there's a link to Amazon. So people thinking independently, they get to similar approaches, realizing that, and I can maybe go back to a meeting with the leader of Hebron's largest Chamula clan. I won't mention his name because sometimes people, but I visited with my students. They have this major clan in Hebron. A third of Hebron is connected to him. And what he said is that the problem of the thinking in Oslo is what is mine is not yours. What is yours is not mine. The zero-sum game of mine, not yours, yours, not mine. We know that the mathematics are not going to change, and it leaves both sides deeply dissatisfied. Part of the challenge is to say, creating a reality which of connection and not of disconnection. In a nutshell, and I'll keep this short because we'd like to get some other questions as well. I think one model is that one model is just like we have the European Union. We know Europe was, for 2,000 years, was a battleground. But since, as far as I know, since the European Union has begun about 70 years ago, there have not been wars in the context of the European Union. And which means things could change. And we don't have to be fatalists. And I think part of the reason why this is that it has changed is because it's a different model. On one hand, we have separate nation states. People have a place of their own, but there's something bigger, something broader, something that has a sense of identity that allows a connection. So if you're living in a European country, you'll feel that you're French, you'll feel that you're German, you have a place of your own, but there's something broader that will allow you open borders, will allow you a passport. It'll allow you also a sense of identity. People could say, I'm European. It's part of who you are. And maybe it's no accident that England, which has a somewhat different sense of identity, and physically it's an island separate, has a more complex relationship. The Holy Land, it's the Holy Land, it's one really organic connection. People who know the place, how small it is, how connected it is. To say of a reality that could be Israel, Palestine, but not two states that are disconnected, but those that could be have something larger that includes
confederate solution, yeah?
A confederacy, which would allow open borders, which would allow the same way that Israel has a large Palestinian minority, there could be a large Jewish and even Israeli minority of Jews living in the Palestinian side.
My wife is Swiss, and Switzerland is the only country in Europe which before the European Union demonstrated the effectivity of this confederate model.
Yes, so this certainly could be a place for a longer discussion, but if people are interested, myself, Rav Yoel, have written about this extensively. And again, Israel, people from the secular, people from the religious, left and right, have all seen that this could be a model to break out of our stalemate.
My good friend Yossi Berlin, whom you know probably, and who has been the father of Oslo, he, in the meantime, is very much on the same path as you, talking about the confederate solution.
Yes, in fact, I quote him in my article, and he's written throughout, often on this subject. Okay, but I'd like to open up, so that this was a very important question, but to give other people other opportunities to express different issues and questions, I'm very pleased that let's hear maybe a different, not only a different person, but a different type of question, perhaps. Please.
May I say?
Maybe open up your speaker.
It's open.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Okay. And Teresa, you must be Christian based on the name of the picture behind you?
Yes.
Great. And right. And I know we have at least 2 Muslims with us. I know we have Hassan and Lamis. Are you also Muslim? Lamis Fayad?
Yes, we talked before, if you remember.
I know, yes, it's another blessing. Just like Rafael was a Facebook friend that I never met in person. So you too, I remember our discussions about Omer Salam and other of our joint acquaintances. Thank you. Okay, please, Teresa, I'm all with you.
Okay. Well, I'm an artist, but I'm also a calligrapher. I live in America. I live in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. So I do calligraphy, and I do the the Hebrew Testament, the New Testament, but then I also take writings of other faiths and I put it in art forms. So in one sense, people are very validated by it, but then on the other sense, people get highly upset. And they think, how dare you write this as an artist when you're not Jewish or you're not Muslim and you're Christian? Or so it's kind of complicated, but I feel compelled that I have to do this. And if I don't do it, and I feel it's because of my faith in God, that God is telling me that I have to do this. So I do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's been times I think, well, I don't want to offend anybody, so I won't do it. And then God will make me have these dreams, and I literally cannot sleep. So then I do the artwork. Some people get really upset with me. And it's a little bit of what you're talking about. And there's somebody who follows me on Facebook, and he recommended that I be here today and watch and be a part of your meeting today. So that's kind of my situation.
I'm glad to respond. You know, there's this wonderful theologian, English theologian, considered to be one of the greatest philosophers of religion of the 20th century, was John Hick. And part of his approaches to religious pluralism was about seeing that, said, in the ancient world, the cosmic understanding of the universe was of Ptolemy. That the earth is the center of the universe and everything goes around that. But then Copernicus came around and said, no, the sun, this is the center of the universe. And we all go around the sun. And his analogy was religions would feel that the center of the universe is me and my religion. But to say that the center of the universe is the sun, is God. And in that place, we have our different planets and we're connected, we're part of a system, but this focus allows us to feel to be more sharing in part of our traditions. I think in particular, one insight, I think the Quran says explicitly, says Abraham, he wasn't Jewish and he wasn't Christian. Abraham, and it's an obvious point, Abraham, he is the friend of God. He is a great monotheist. He's a great lover of people. And he goes in the way of God. And his children, and from his children, developed either his physical children or his spiritual children, ultimately came out Jews, Christians, and Muslims. But taking ownership is something I think we should be doing. Of course, and I assume, and I'm sure you're doing it, whatever's done would be something that would give respect and respect even according to what's considered respectful for that particular religion. But the very fact it's somebody else, an outsider, I mean, this is the vision of the book of the prophets. We look at a vision of humanity connected together, shoulder to shoulder, calling in the name of God together. You know, I'll even give you an example of a halachic, a decision that I made and publicized recently in Israel relating to a similar type of question. I'm a friend with the head imam.
Excuse me, Rav Yaakov, your microphone's getting worse and worse. Did you do something in the past 10 minutes with your microphone? It's full of static.
No, it's probably connected to the power failure in Othniel, which means that it's a miracle that I'm not cut off the Zoom yet, because there's no electricity. That's why everything is dark here. But somehow the battery is keeping it going. But at some point I might get cut off. But do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. So the head of the Bedouin city of Rahat told me that there's a dentist in his community, Dr. Mohammed, and he just opened up a clinic in a Jewish town. And to respect the Jews there, he wants to put a mezuzah on his door. A mezuzah is parchment from the Bible that has the call of Shema Yisrael. Hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one. And Dr. Muhammad wants a rabbi to come to put it up. But I saw that there are halachic books that says that we should not give over a mezuzah to non-Jews unless there's some special fear that this will lead to hatred. But I feel, wait a second, why should this be the case? It's so beautiful. We have Dr. Muhammad. He wants to respect his Jewish customers. Why should there be a problem here? So I said, I have to investigate this. So I found the original halachic decision from the 14th century. And when I read that, I understood why I could change, why this is not relevant. First of all, the Talmud had a story of a rabbi sending a mezuzah to the king of Persia. So obviously there must be cases that it can't be something which is forbidden. But the halachic decision was made in the 14th century. There was a knight at a castle in Germany who heard a story that at a different fortress, they put a mezuzah, and somehow they felt it helped protect the fortress. So he went to the Jewish community and asked for a mezuzah. But the rabbi said, he thinks that this is some type of magical amulet. And he doesn't really respect the mezuzah. If he feels that it doesn't help, this holy mezuzah, he will desecrate it. And furthermore, when his priest finds out about it, and this is the time that the church very much persecuted Jews, when the church will hear that he took a mezuzah, he will push him to desecrate this mezuzah. And as a result, don't give over mezuzah, because we have to respect the sanctity of the mezuzah. But when I saw that, I said, wait a second, but here it's a totally different story. We have somebody who's coming to respect the mezuzah. It's somebody who his religious faith leader asked for it. So I circulated this among a number of rabbis, and I wrote this up as a halachic responsa that I hope this will be a precedent for now on to see that in our realities that this is very different. Okay, so
the light of the Torah is back.
Yes, okay, the light is back. Okay, so and any other questions?
I have a question.
Please.
I would
Okay.
very much.
Yeah, please, Rav Hanan.
I have known for many, many years that you teach at Yeshivat Otniel, and
Yes.
when I invited you to speak in this event, you told me that you're on sabbatical, you're not at Otniel this year, and you are the
Yes, I'm connected to Mr. Blickle.
Yeah, you're the founding director of the Orthodox Blickle Institute for Interfaith Dialogue. So I want to know what the Institute is about, what it does, and how Roots can help you in your work.
Wonderful. Okay. This is a wonderful question. So part of it is Blickle is Torah Institute has 28 institutions. It's a whole network. They have yeshivot, they have midrashot, high schools for boys and girls. They have programs training rabbis. And the head of Torah, Rabbi Brander, who recently replaced Rabbi Riskin, and Rabbi Riskin was also very active in Interfaith, but Rabbi Brander thought we have to take it one step further, that realizing that the question of the Jewish people and humanity and the challenges involved This is a major issue of our times, and this is also a major educational issue. The state of Israel is a Jewish state, but it has non-Jewish minorities. Israel is surrounded by countries which we're in conflict with different religions. Israel has a very complex situation and conflict with the Palestinians. Now, feeling that the Torah and Judaism, halachically, spiritually, should be a source of guidance on all the issues relating to this, this needs a new institution. And together with, and primarily with the support of the Blickle family, and we're privileged to have Carl and Elizabeth with us today, they went ahead, and even though it's during Corona, feeling that they didn't want to wait to start an institution that will help creating and new halachic and spiritual thinking. Let me mention, it's really two new institutions. There is the Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity, and there is the Blickle Institute for Interfaith Dialogue. And I think part of the connection, the basic, the initial studying of the raw material is done with the Beit Midrash. And then the need to take that and transform it into resources that could promote interfaith education and interfaith dialogue. That's what the Institute is about. Meaning, when I'm teaching in the different Torah institutes, teaching the rabbis that are going out in Israel and abroad, the yeshiva students, the midrashah, this is part of the Blickle Institute of actually teaching, developing curriculums, but it's a real partnership between these two groups. The Beit Midrash, I'm involved with both of them. The Beit Midrash does the basic raw material, and then we have to transform it to be the basic and the building stones for the dialogue, or as Carl likes saying, trialogue, having Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, not in a two sides against, which could sometimes be two sides against the third side. Sometimes there's a certain type of Jewish-Christian dialogue that leaves Islam out, and I can imagine a Islamic Jewish that would leave Christianity out, but really try to get a full connection, and that's what the Blickle does do. But I feel that we're all connected because what we discover at our encounters in roots of our studies of years contributes to the educational programs. And I hope that the students will be involved. I mean, as you know, I've been bringing students for years to see roots, see with their own eyes. And I hope Torah institutions will now be more and more involved and seeing the real thing, because interfaith, again, it can't just be ideas. It has to be encounter. So I feel we could teach in the schools, we could develop curriculum, give them all the right ideas, but we can't do everything. And therefore it's a blessing that just around the corner, because from my new office, I could see the Roots field right across the road, to have students coming, meeting you and meeting the Palestinians, Khalid and Ali and all the other wonderful Palestinians that are part of the Roots initiative. Okay, so maybe one more question, and then
Can I add a short additional remark to this? You named it already. You know, Rav Hanan, we have a foundation in Germany, which is for Interfaith Dialogue, and it started from Jewish-Christian dialogue, and it extended by the vote of our Jewish co-founders. They said, we cannot make interfaith dialogue without the Muslims. And so we have a history on that, and I've supported within Torah Stone for many years their project for Christian-Jewish understanding and cooperation, which is Jewish-Christian. And then it was a present from heaven that when I tried to convince Torah Stone that within their work for Christian Jewish understanding, they should also set a path for the third partner for Muslim. Then at the same time, the new chief rabbi, Brander, came in, and nearly by a miracle, we somehow had the same impulse and the same spiritual vision. And thus, now with this Blickle Institute, this very Orthodox institution of Ortona Stone, under its roof, have both. They have the Center for Jewish Christian Cooperation and Understanding, and now with the Blickle Institute and the Beit Midrash, the extension from dialogue to trialogue. And what is very, very touching for my wife and me, who have been doing this interfaith work in Germany since many years, and also in the West Bank for decades, that now within the Jewish world, an Orthodox institution opens for this idea of interfaith dialogue. So far, it was very difficult for us that within the Jewish world, it was either the secular Jews or it was Reform who were apt and open for interfaith dialogue, but it was difficult and hard to get, let's say, a foot into the door of Orthodox Judaism as far as interfaith dialogue is concerned. And I only got to know Rabbi Dr. Yacov Nagen now by this Blickle Institute, and here I find that within Orthodox Judaism there is a great openness and readiness. So that for us is the very great discovery that interfaith dialogue is also possible within the Orthodox world, and we hope to disseminate that idea from Israel also to the Jewish diaspora. In Germany, there are many new Jewish communities, and unfortunately, their knowledge on interfaith dialogue is very little. So we hope that from the rabbinical education which they receive on interfaith dialogue in Germany, they can also disseminate and distribute that to Europe and to the world.
Amen. And I think we're almost out of time. So I would like to respond because Dr. Robin was so very sent a question by chat. So let me please respond to that. The question is, should we be tracing impact? I think I have a good test case because I've been a rabbi in Othniel for 23 years, and I could see when we start within the yeshiva of Othniel, I've been talking about these topics for a number of years, and I'm able to see that through the years, a large number of groups and activists in many areas have come out of the yeshiva. So it's not statistical, but I can know that the students in 10 we have several hundred students in the yeshiva. We've probably, since I've come to O'Neill, there are close to 2,000 graduates. And between Rabbi Froman and later myself, these messages have been heard often, and in many organizations, in many groups, wherever you go, you'll find students from O'Neill. And we know from Roots knows also that students are always coming through. So if that's an indication, that's something which I think gives hope for the future.
Thank you.
So dear friends, it's really wonderful to see everybody here. I start with the verse from the Bible about joy. I started with the book what I said, the Hebrew would be, "This is the day that God has made, let us be filled with joy." but I end with the verse from the book of Kohelet. I think in English, what's Kohelet in English?
Ecclesiastes.
Right, I can never pronounce that.
Ecclesiastics, yes.
Right. Yeah. And about the end of things, calling for the fear of God, because I feel together with the love and the joy, sometimes it is the fear of God that inspires us to do what's right and not what's wrong. So I'll say it in Hebrew, Sof davar, hakol nishma, et Elohim yira, ve'et mitzvotav shmor, ki ze kol ha'adam. Okay, a pleasure being with everybody. And now it's it's 11 o'clock in Israel, and I have some little kids that still haven't gone to sleep. So I'm going to get into now I have to start working. Okay.
Thank you very, very much, Rav Yaakov.
Thank you also, Yakov.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
And his
also,
family.
Thank you so
Hanan,
much.
thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Yaakov.
that
Bye.
you were
Thank you.
allowed
Great to see
participate.
everybody.
2 words at the end from Roots. I'd like to remind everyone, as we said at the beginning, that next week we have a session at the same time, Tech to Peace, Engineering a Change of Heart. We'll be hearing from the Tech to Peace organization that uses entrepreneurship and technology as a foundation to bring together young Israelis and young Palestinians for deep understanding. That's next
Is it
week.
also in English?
In English, yes.
Okay. Yeah,
That-
we will send us the link. You have my email address, send us the link. And Rafanan, I hardly can understand that so far. I have not met Roots, and because we're Israel and Palestine are nearly our second home. So I want to get to know Roots better, and I will see you meet you on the homepage. And I can already tell you, I saw a remark just before, but I find that a sacred work which you're doing, and with our Interfaith Foundation, which we have in Germany, but which works internationally and especially in the Middle East. I would be more than happy to support the work of Roots. So let me have information, and when Corona allows it and the skies are open, usually we travel every year at least twice to Israel and to Palestine. So we will come and see you. But until then, I would be more than ready and happy to support your work. So take this as an offer. And I was very impressed of course, of what Yakov Nagen said. We know him, but also this allowed us to know him even more, but also to meet all you people there. I didn't know about the existence of Root and what they're doing, and also now today this very spiritual subject, and next Sunday this very practical subject from Tech to Peace is fantastic. And we've been conducting just a parallel problem from Tech to Peace with the Hinuch LeShalom Geneva Initiative and the Palestinian Peace Coalition in Ramallah for more than 3 years. We have been conducting seminars with young Israeli and business people and young Palestinian business people, exactly with the same title. And we have had even seminars with 30 participants from both sides under the subject from Tech to Peace. So I'm astounded, and I'm happy to hear you're dealing with that subject.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting Rav Yaakov. Thank you for the work you do. And thank you for your offer of supporting Roots. We'll certainly be in contact. And I will close by reminding everyone that Roots has a website, friendsofroots.net. You see it in the chat, friendsofroots.net. Don't make the mistake of going to friendsofroots.org. Don't go there. It'll take you to China to buy Roots. We're not selling Roots, we're selling peace. Friendsofroots.net.
Okay.
Friendsofroots.net. And there, Carl mentioned the need for support. He said he's interested in supporting Roots. I also ask everyone else, everyone to their ability, go to our website, go to the donate page there, and please help us as much as you can. to continue this work, the work on the ground between Israelis and Palestinians, as well as the work of spreading the word to Americans, to people in Europe, around the world, about reconciliation, about peace, and about deep understanding, acceptance of the other. Thank you very much for being with us, and hope to see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you very much, Rav Hanan. Bye-bye. Laila Tov.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Bye.
שכוייח חנן, כל הכבוד. Alan Yoel, how are you?
Oh, good. Kol hakavod. This was amazing.
Hanan's okay.
Thank you. Kol hakavod.
Yofi. Okay, great work, Hanan. Nice meeting you, Carl and Elizabeth. I'm also an activist at Roots.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're an activist of Roots, and are you in Israel or in the United States?
I'm on the West Bank. What does
West
that mean?
Bank. Oh, where in the West Bank?
No, I'm in Gush Etzion in Kfar Etzion.
In Gush Etzion, in
Kfar Etzion, yeah.
We're neighbors, myself and Meir, Myron.
Right. We live in walking. I see Hanan's place almost from my house, but right across the way.
So that's down there in the Holy Land. Everything is so close together. We're used to the bigger distances, but everything is so close. And
right.
I have more time now to tell you. Yakov knows it. You know, I'm 70 and my wife is 72, and we met. She's Swiss. I'm German. And we met as young volunteers when in the 1970s, from 1970, just 4 years after the 6 Days War, we served as peace volunteers in Ramallah.
Wow.
And I was running an embroidery cooperative of 300 Palestinian women to manufacture embroideries, and we were selling them in Israel and in Europe. And at that time, it was much easier to cross the border as now. There was no wall. And my wife worked with an organization called Christian Peace Service of Switzerland in a Christian Palestinian school in Ramallah. For that Palestinian school, she was building an association in Germany. And the school now is the probably biggest and best private school in Ramallah. So we've been involved with, let's say, the peace and understanding and coexistence. And of course, we're very worried how the whole thing has developed in the past years. We support the Geneva and Hinuch LeShalom and Palestinian Peace Coalition. But to me now, this approach of Rabbi Nagen and also what just the subject of today, how can religion support politics? That to me is the real big question, and I would give everything if we can contribute something to that, to bring together interfaith dialogue and understanding of religions with the efforts for peace accords and political agreements. So this is a big question, and you saw from my question to Yacov Nagen, how can we support both sides, and we support both the political peace efforts and the religious interfaith peace efforts, and how can the one serve the other? That to me is the big question.
With us here now is Yoel Oz, who actually is doing that connection very one-on-one. I mean, other organizations like the Land to All or Two States, One Homeland also are working on confederation ideas, but Yoel is...
Hello? We lost Myron. Yeah, I don't, this is a Roots event, so I don't want to take from Rav Hanan's time, but one of the things, the Abrahamic movement, that we see ourselves as a bridge between organizations that are doing grassroots interfaith work and also people who are doing political work. There's a federation movement, there's a confederation movement. the Abrahamic movement that I started with a secular Israeli friend of mine, we promote an idea that we call Abrahamic federalism as a paradigm.
Abrahamic, oh, fantastic. Abrahamic federalism.
Yes.
What a great notion.
So I sent you in the link my books and my articles on the topic. And I've been in touch also with a...
Please do so, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, please send me the link and books. I'm fascinated by the notion of Abrahamic federalism. That unites just the two aspects, the political aspect, federalism, and the religious aspect, Abrahamic federalism.
So we're calling it bridging the spiritual and the political. That, you know, we need to be thinking both. Roots literally is doing the bottom up work. I mean, without roots, none of, and Rabbi Nagen and I have talked about this, that you really need the people to people thing, that it is so critical. But a lot of organizations are afraid of getting involved in politics, and I'm not, frankly.
You're Joel Oz.
Yoel Oz, yes.
Oz.
Yes.
Do you have something to do with Amos Oz?
No, just similar last name.
Okay.
But I was a rabbi in Washington, D.C. And so being involved in the intersection of religion and politics is something that I have in my background. And it's a very, very tight rope that you have to walk. But we're trying to do it. And Rav Nagen said that the Blickle Center does not want to touch politics. And this is a roots event, and I don't want to, you know, this is really, you know, Rav Hanan's time and place. But if you would like to talk, I'd be happy to, you know, continue a conversation with you about our organization.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. You know, to me, it's as I said, it's not a question of religion or politics. We have been, my wife and me, since we engaged in this since 45 years, we've been wanderers between the worlds, between the religious world and the political world, and between the Palestinian world and the Israeli world, and to be bridge builders in many ways. So it's never an either or. It's always how to connect the two.
So the bridging the spiritual and the political. Another person whose name I would mention, if you're not familiar with, is Rabbi Dr. Mark Gopin. He's a professor of conflict resolution and religion in the United States, and he's written many books, and he's a remarkable person. I'm a novice in this area. These guys are the pros.
Well, it's fascinating to me, to all of you who are here in this virtual conference. I have never met before, and I'm very grateful to Rav Hanan and to Yacov Nagen to invite us, and also to meet you and the gentleman to whom I just spoke before. And you're so close together, all within the West Bank and Israel. We are far away, but as soon as it will be possible, we will travel, and we about the country is we will as soon as possible want to meet you, and Roots, as well as your organization, Abrahamic Abrahamic Federalism
Movement.
or Abrahamic
the
Movement.
Organization is called the Abrahamic Movement. The idea is Abrahamic Federalism.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rav Hanan.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I got thrown out.
I don't know if
Hello?
the connection is really bad.
Yeah, I got thrown. We have a great rain, though. Hanan, this is a beautiful. Yeah, we have a beautiful first rain here, a thunderstorm.
I hear the thunder in your house. I can't hear it here. I'm in the basement.
It's really, really strong. I'm sorry I missed whatever I missed.
It is so prophetic. I'm interfaith, but also my wife and me very religious, and we believe that really that may be why you tell me your name again.
My name's Myron.
Madron, yes, Madron.
Myron, yes.
You obviously have emigrated from the United States to
yes.
to roots, and this has been our wish for many years. We are here. I'm a businessman. I'm retired, but I'm now for 10 years running this Interfaith foundation. But really, although the country is so small, Israel and the West Bank, but really, I believe that in the Messianic, we're in very important days and times, and the vision is that the people of the world, Christians and Muslims, will come to the Zion, to Jerusalem, and learn, and not only learn about Judaism in religion, but learn about this prophetic vision of the late prophets of the Bible, who have taught that Jerusalem will be a place where all the people from the world come and will unite and will learn all together. And this is our vision. And one step in that vision is now this latest step to set up with Torah Stone the Blickle Institute. But this is not restricted to the Blickle Institute. All people of good faith and of good intention, with the same intention like you're saying now, and like you, we want to meet and we want to unite and we want to support.
In my book, I wrote a proposal about establishing a Jerusalem International Institute for Religion and Peace near the old city. That was one of the things.
Is it, when you sent me the link, do I have the title of the book?
The title is Abrahamic Confederation. I'm working on a revised edition, but yeah.
Can I order this through Amazon or?
Yes.
Amazon, Abrahamic Federalism.
Abrahamic Confederation is the title.
Abrahamic Confederation. Okay, so right
away. As you know from Switzerland is called the Swiss Confederation, but it's really a federation. So the federation confederation thing is that's open. I say when it comes to federalism, I'm pragmatic, and on Abraham, I'm dogmatic.
Look, my wife is Swiss, and whenever we've been talking about the third way between one-state solution and a two-state solution, my wife has been saying since decades, let them follow the Swiss example and set up a confederation. Switzerland is the only country in Europe where this has worked before the European Union. In Switzerland, it has worked since 200 years. And now in the European Union, it works sometimes better, sometimes less, but at least peace, like Yakov has said, peace has been, there's been no more violence in 70 years in Europe. But the example for this has always been Switzerland.
So we have a partners called the Federation Movement, and so they're all secular people, and they're specifically using Switzerland and the cantons model as one of their paradigms. There's another group called the Land for All, which is more confederation. So this debate, federation, confederation, it's fluid. We need to create something that's tailored to our needs. What it's called, that I think,
But the basic idea is the same, be it federation or confederation. the basic idea is the same, that it consists of locally independent units, but in the same time is a free exchange of people, informations, economics, and they have centralized authorities to do some things together, but on a grassroots level, each one of them is independent, and therefore the identity of each side is guaranteed, but as well what each one can benefit from from the other, like economic issues or security issues, can be handled together. And to me, since many years, I'm close friend with Yossi Beilin, who has been the father of the Oslo Accord, and he, as I said before, recently, I don't know how, he's very secular, so maybe in religious circles he's not so popular, but this idea of a federate or confederate solution has been just in the last years also his offer for a third way in between the two alternatives. And
so we basically, it's the idea of a hybrid with Abraham as its unifying symbolic thread, bringing together the children of Yitzchak and the children of Ishmael, and it's a clear symbol for why the Jewish people are in this land in the first place, that it's a return to the land of our forefathers. And I think that for Jews, it's very important, literally, that we're rooted, to use your term. This is our homeland, and it's because of, we're reading in the Torah these past last week and this week all the stories about Abraham, and that's why we're here. Zionism, didn't begin with Herzl. It began with God giving the commandment to Abraham to go to the land that he will show him. And so that's, and this is in the Quran as well. There's a verse that God told Abraham to go to the land that will be blessed for all people. So it's, and we saw with the Abraham Accord with the UAE, that this symbol, it resonates. And I think that, it's something, what Palestinians are a little concerned about right now is that they feel stabbed in the back by the Emiratis, and so the Abrahamic branding, it went the other way. The Palestinians were loving it, and the Jews were very skeptical, and now the Jews are like, oh, okay, this could work, and now the Palestinians are skeptical. But I think it'll go back and forth, and it's that's a longer discussion.
Let me ask at the end. We meet the first time, so
yes,
it is not usual to talk politics right off at the first meeting, but still the American elections are 3 days or 2 days ahead of us, and I'm German. I have nothing to say, nothing to vote in America, but I'm really, let's say, in a real inner conflict. On the one side, I have to say, I dislike Trump strongly. I don't want to be even stronger of this, and I really do not consider him to be a moral person, and maybe not even a peace-liking. With this, even if be it mostly tactical or of interest, but this is a real breakthrough, and I do not like to admit and do not want to give the success to Trump, but here he has chosen, or Kushner has chosen, something which has so far not been tried in a like you said before, to connect the interfaith religious argument with the political argument. And by naming that agreement, Abraham Accord, the people who signed it, and including Kushner and Trump, they chose to give this peace accord a religious connotation. Otherwise, they wouldn't have named it Abraham Accord. And
I actually thought that myself, and I verified with inside sources. It didn't come from the Americans. It comes from the Gulf states themselves.
Really?
I had the same idea that you did. I said Kushner is an Orthodox Jew. His whole staff are religious Jews. Perhaps it was their initiative to put a religious spin on these agreements, but that's not the case. How do I know that? We had an event just like tonight, just like what you're at right now, 2 weeks ago, in which I hosted Rabbi David Rosen.
Yes, we had Rabbi David Rosen last Monday in the opening event of the Blickle Institute.
Very nice.
He spoke on the same subject.
Yeah, so he explained very, very clearly that the religious flavor and tone of these accords actually comes from 11 years of interfaith dialogue that he was a major part of. And actually at the end of his presentation, I asked him point blank in front of everyone, just like I said, did Kushner and his staff have anything to do with the religious spin on these accords? And he said, no, it didn't come from the Americans.
So it came from the Muslims.
Came from the Muslims, who were inspired, of course, by their connections with the Pope and with Rabbi David and his other collaborators.
But then at least let's say we have to give credits to Kushner and Trump that they allowed.
If they allowed, okay.
This religious language. I'm the least and the last to defend Trump, and I also think I'm Christian myself, but I think the alliance with which he has in America with the 40 million reborn Christians, the evangelicals, the right wing, I deeply suspect it, and all the politics of Trump towards Israel is, in my view, just that he wants to please the American evangelicals who represent 40 million voters. So as far as his motivation is concerned, I'm very skeptical, but at least he has contributed to effect something which is an absolute new element in the discussion of 100 years or 70 years of peace agreements and peace accords in the Middle East.
Yeah, so we'll give him some credit, but he's much more dangerous than he is a force for good.
Yes, I fully agree. And that's why if you are also so open with me, I can tell you, although I cannot vote, but I still hope he does not make it on
well, we're expats, so I don't know if Rav Hanan or Myron voted, but I voted.
Yeah. You're allowed to vote?
Yeah, I have dual citizenship.
I tried to vote, but the state of Texas didn't send me my absentee ballot.
Man, it's great to meet you people. I'm really this has been a great event. I'm very touched, and be sure.
Can I be in contact with you by email?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm more than happy, and I took as many notes as I could. I want to be in contact with you. I want to get your book, and I'm ready with our foundation to support Roots as well as your Abrahamic movement. I think this is it's a whole new landscape of ideas concerning bridging a spiritual and political field, and this is very, very fascinating, because we've been activists in bridge building for more than 40 years, and at the moment, at least until this Abraham Accord, we have been heavily discouraged what happened in the past years. And as much as we try also to help the Palestinian side, but also the role they play with blockading and boycotting, that's not the right way. But it's really, we're sort of, disillusioned of what can happen as far as peace and coexistence is concerned. And therefore, this new world of bringing together and bridge the spiritual, religious, and the political scene, that to us, and to my wife, myself, our foundation, and the people we work with, is a really new level and a sign of hope. So I want to learn.
What's really vital is bottom up and top down.
Yes.
They need to be both happening, in my opinion. And
both right. It's not either or.
It's not either or. They both have.
They have to happen both at the same time.
Okay, so we'll all be in contact. Yoel will be in contact with you. Roots will be in contact. Thank you very much for making this happen with the institute that Rav Yaakov is the head of. Thank you for your offer of learning more and supporting. It's all good.
God bless
Hopefully
you.
we'll make an
Thank you for meeting, for inviting us, and we can't wait to meet you in Encounter as soon as possible. As soon as Corona allows, it will be there, and we will meet with you.
You're invited to my home and to the Root Center. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.